Hey, Rick Brandenburg for Turf Bugs and Rock and Roll, and we're going to continue on the series of talking about some late summer, early fall proactive measures for management of pests, and Fred's going to continue his discussion of some efforts you can make towards POA management early in the fall to help remedy that situation.
Okay, so in the last video we talked a little bit about when POA germinates. We talked about that 60-day window between September 1 and October 30th where 80% germinates. That applies all over the U.S. except where you get in really cool climates and maybe some places like Grandfather Mountain and places like that, the seasons get reversed. But that's for the most part when POA germinates. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is herbicidal control of POA annua. One of the main problems we have with annual bluegrass, and I'm going to use annual bluegrass and POA annua interchangeably, so my apologies for that. One of the big problems we have is that annual bluegrass is a highly genetically diverse species. So as a result of that, we will get herbicide resistance to almost any herbicide we apply to POA annua. So we have to be very, very careful with our modes of action. If you are using one mode of action to control POA, I can tell you, you're making a mistake. You're asking for resistance to develop if you're using one mode of action year after year. So what we are now doing and recommending, and is something that all turfgrass managers need to do, is to mix your modes of action. So again, your basis of your control should be in the fall, because that's when POA is germinating and that's when it's very small. So we have a lot of different modes of action we can use for annual bluegrass control, but my suggestion to you going forward is to use 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 modes of action to control annual bluegrass. You're going to need to do that to control POA annua. Now, there's several ways you can do that. You can make applications at different times, like in other words, you can make 2 or 3 applications in the fall of various products. Or you can mix your herbicide modes of action in one tank and go out there and try to get it all at one time. So for instance, if you're using if you want to use a pre-emergence herbicide, and that would need to go down prior to September 1. But if you wanted to wait to, let's say, mid-October or even all the way up to, I wouldn't go much later in mid-November, but let's say early November, mid-October to early November, if you want to use a pre-emergence product for POA and tank mix it with a post-emergence product or 2 post-emergence products to kill the POA, and if you use, so that way you'll be using 3 modes of action. So let's say November 1, you could use various products, whether it be Specticle or Prodiamine, mixed with like Simazine or Curb, and even put in things like Revolver and Monument or things like that for post-emergence control. But if you're going to use a post-emergence herbicide, make sure you try to go early in the fall. I like early November because the POA is germinated, it's small, and the weather's still pretty warm. So don't wait into December, or even, things can get kind of chilly around here around end of November. And when it does that, POA kind of stops growing and it's kind of hard to kill it with a herbicide. One last thing I'll mention to you is a lot of people were disappointed in their POA control programs last year. We had a lot of different POA control programs out, and they were unsuccessful in our research trials last year. But in previous years, they've been highly successful. There's some reasons why that occurred last year. A couple things happened. One, we had some really early germination, early in that September time frame. So what that meant was when we got over into November, the POA was already pretty big, so it was kind of hard to kill with post-emergence herbicides. The other thing we had was we had a very wet winter that caused some herbicide degradation. So my point here is this. Don't make wholesale changes to your POA control program if it's been working in previous years. If it was a failure last year, I would be hesitant to change too much because last year was kind of an anomaly. We could have the same thing this year, but we don't, I wouldn't bet on that. I would say just stay the course, mix your modes of action, either separate them in time or tank mix them together and try to control POA that way. But by putting different modes of action in, you're optimizing your POA control program. So good luck with that, and we'll continue to do research on this topic, and of course you can find all the latest research information on Turf Files. Thank you.